Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.
Now let me move to Joseph Boateng from KC Family Programs. Floor is yours, Joseph.
Thank you, Hubert. Thank you, everyone. So I work for the foundation of the founder of UPS, and you see those planes flying to many parts of the world. So needless to say, we invest globally, and I've been investing on the continent for a number of years and decades. You've made most of the points. Thanks, Guy, for your presentation. So I'll be very brief, and I'll touch on some of them, and we can have a dialogue, after this WebEx. I'd like to start off by three things. One, the enabling environment, execution risk, and the third one has to do with the asset owner. I'm speaking from the perspective of the asset owner. Are we speaking the language that the asset owner can, in a language that resonates with the asset owner? And I'll address that in a moment. With respect to the enabling environment, both Sharon, Matt, Kate, and Eloy have talked about it. I will not belabor it. I would say that it's super important. When you talk about Africa, most institutional investors think risk. We need to be able to follow the trend lines as opposed to the headlines. And part of it is having an enabling environment that respects capital, attracts capital, and is able to deploy capital at scale. So the model law certainly is a tool that can be used. And I would like to note that I like your audience, Hubert, the heads of states. I cannot overemphasize, the importance of political will. If that will is not there, nobody will send capital over there. A politician told me in Brazil that their political assets and liabilities versus financial assets and liabilities and the discount rates are not the same. If the political will is not there, no money will move in that direction. The points about the tariffs is super important. How you're able to get repayment for the various forms of capital and still meet, your either government goals or your social responsibility goals, which we have. You don't want to price out those who need it. And Matt, I like your comment that for an asset that delivers 10% real, I would love it. But we don't hear that much from the consulting, community. You don't hear that narrative that much. What we hear is risk. And the whole thing is on how do you integrate the whole concept of water, a scarce resource, into the asset liability framework, into the asset allocation framework. How do you get paid for it? It's not just a correlation thing. And if you're looking at the base currency of a US investor, as an example, how do you deal with things like, currency risk? It's not just a correlation story. These are things that need to be addressed or brought in front of that institutional investors. As to whether we engage the consulting community or as to whether we address them directly, I think that's a missing link. And talk about the language. We need investable assets. You may talk to someone sitting in my seat, bankable, great. What does that mean? We want to be able to invest in assets that make a difference. And I also want to talk about what I call the execution risk. Besides having government policy aligning with the investment theory, which leads to better results, execution is important. A bad project does not become good just because of a guarantee, or just because it has the label that is coming from the EU, African Union. No, nobody cares. We have tons of ideas competing for capital. 10% real will resonate with a number of people. So having that capacity to deploy these assets, being able to take the project to the finish line, success begets success, to me is super important. And we should be transparent. We should be able to tell our story, the good, the bad, the ugly, and be able to put forth and back our words with the actions. My final point is that there's a lot of private capital sitting out there, and we need to tap it. So the DFIs and the government should not crowd out this private capital. So structures which Kate mentioned, I'm very much I lean towards that. If you have, first loss structures, whether the governments will put, tranche, the risk, provide first loss, or if the DFIs, the MDBs will consider that first loss to crowd in capital, which will make a change. The impact is very transformational. I'll end on this point, since there are other parties, but there's a lot to be talked about. So I'll end here. Hubert, hand back to you.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.